This week on The Watchman, it's the most coveted piece of real estate in the world. Learn why Jerusalem is not just Israel's capital, it's part of its soul.
Here in Jerusalem, you actually live inside history, inside the history book, which is actually around you, engraved into those walls.
Plus, we take an amazing journey through biblical history as we tour the tunnels beneath the Western Wall in the footsteps of Jesus. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman on TBN. We're coming to you today from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, home to the White House, the U.S. Congress, and so much history and symbolism for the United States. Washington is the seat of power in America and has been for most of our existence as a nation. So, you can imagine if the international community demanded that America divide D.C. in half. Imagine the United States being pressured to turn over half of its capital city to another people, a people who did not even recognize America's right to exist, and some of whom engaged in regular acts of terror against U.S. civilians. Now, call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure most of you would say, no way, we will never divide Washington, D.C., especially under the circumstances which I just laid out. That's just common sense, right? Now, put yourself in Israel's shoes. Over 3,000 years ago, Jerusalem was the undivided capital of Israel under King David. Fast forward to today, Jerusalem, remarkably, is still the undivided capital of Israel. Jerusalem is not just Israel's capital, it is part of its very soul. It's the city where the Bible says God will one day sit on his holy throne. According to the book of Zechariah, old men and women shall again sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each with staff in hand because of great age. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in its streets. Folks, you can see that in Jerusalem today. The Jewish people have returned and reestablished their ancient capital in these Bible times we're living in. It's a miracle of God. And yet, the international community demands that Israel divide Jerusalem and give half of it to the Palestinians, even as the Palestinian leadership refuses to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. And groups like Hamas continue to carry out terrorist attacks against Israelis on a regular basis. Now, to put this in perspective, America has been a nation for only 240 years. We may be incredibly powerful, but as a nation, we are young. The Jewish people, on the other hand, have an over 3,000-year connection to Jerusalem. Even after the Second Temple was destroyed, rebellions failed, and the people of Israel were scattered to the ends of the earth. There always remained a continuous Jewish presence in the land of Israel and a longing for Jerusalem among Jews around the world. No people is more attached to a city physically, historically, and spiritually than the Jews are to Jerusalem. Yes, that even includes we Americans to Washington, D.C. Here at Christians United for Israel, we recognize the central importance of Jerusalem. We declare that for Zion's sake, we will not remain silent. For Jerusalem's sake, we will not remain quiet. And if ever there was a time to speak up for Jerusalem, it's now. Well, Dr. Kadar is a renowned Israeli scholar of Arabic literature and a lecturer at Bar Ilan University in Israel. He is also fearless, and as a fluent Arabic speaker, regularly appears on Arab television defending Israel. And folks, he does not hold his peace. Take a look at Dr. Kadar discussing the Jewish claim to Jerusalem in this now famous clip from Al Jazeera.
القدس مدينتنا إلى أبد الأبدين ولا شأن لا للجزيرة ولا لأحد في مدينة القدس. نقطة، هي مدينة لليهود فقط، ليس لأحد أي شأن بمدينة القدس.
يعني هل تريد أن تقول بأن كلامك هذا يعني بأن المفاوضات التي تتم بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين تتم بناء على الأمر الواقع الذي تتحدث به الآن يا سيد مردخاي كدار؟
يا أخي أنا أدعوك للقدس لتشوف بأم عينك كيف القدس أصبحت مدينة زاهرة بعد أن كانت خاربة تحت أيدي العرب حتى 67. نحن بنينا هذه المدينة من جديد، وهي الآن مفتوحة للمسيحيين وللمسلمين ولليهود على حد سواء، كما لم تكن أبدا تحت سيطرة الإسلام، لأن الإسلام أقصى اليهود من القدس والمسيحيين أيضا.
طيب
في بعض الأوقات
أنا أريدك أن تعطيني جوابا، تعطيني جوابا.
As you can see, Dr. Mordecai Kadar is a truth teller, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with him recently in one of the more memorable places that I've ever done an interview, in the tunnels beneath the Western Wall in the old city of Jerusalem. Take a look. Dr. Kadar, thanks so much for joining us today, and man, I can't think of a better place to interview you about the history of Jerusalem, the Jewish people's historical claim to this city, than being here in the Hasmonean Hall beneath the old city of Jerusalem from the Second Temple period. So first of all, a great setting for our interview.
Thank you very much. Here in Jerusalem, you actually live inside history, inside the history book, which is actually around you, engraved into those walls.
Yeah, it really is. When you come here in a place like this, it comes alive for you. And the interesting thing about it is that there is a real effort today, Dr. Kadar, to deny the claim of the Jewish people to Jerusalem, to even deny that there was a temple on the Temple Mount.
For them, the mere existence of the State of Israel and the Jewish ownership of Jerusalem and presence on the Temple Mount is a theological threat on Islam.
Yeah.
Before it is anything connected to territory or to national issues or legal issues or any other issue. It's first of all, and before everything, it is a religious threat on Islam, because they cannot fathom the fact that Judaism comes back to life in the Jewish capital, which was Jewish capital for 3,000 years, way before Washington, D.C. became the capital of the Americans, Paris became the capital of the French, London of the British, and so forth. Jerusalem is the most ancient capital in the world. Yet, unfortunately, our enemies, are encouraged by states, by politicians who still do not recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the Jews, of the only Jewish state in the world, the state of Israel. And this encourages them.
What are some of the claims that they make? And we're talking about not only Hamas and jihadis, but the Palestinian Authority, who is supposedly Israel's moderate partner for peace in the eyes of the world. They are deep into this temple denial movement, aren't they?
They want to detach the Jews from Jerusalem in order to extract our heart from this place. And they know that once they have Jerusalem, they will have the whole country, the whole Palestine. And they actually show it. Let me show you a scarf which they use in their demonstrations. I think I have it in my pocket. Yes, here it is. This is produced by the PA, by the Palestinian Authority.
Mahmoud Abbas's Palestinian Authority, who the United
on one
States,
side it says Al-Quds Lana, Jerusalem is ours. When was Jerusalem a capital of any Arab or Islamic state? Never, not even for one day in history. But on the other side of the scarf, and this is a scarf, they show the whole country, Palestine. The whole land, from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free, as they say.
Yeah.
Means they see the connection.
So there is no Israel.
Not at all. Where is Israel? Israel is in the sea.
Israel's in the sea.
In a week should go to the fish.
Right.
And they see the connection between having Jerusalem and having the whole country. So for them, there is no Israel at all.
None.
And
it's much deeper than Jerusalem.
And they take advantage of the fact that the world has not yet recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and no embassy is in Jerusalem.
Talk a bit about the history of Jerusalem. I guess you would say more recent, before 1967, when the Jewish people in the Six-Day War reclaimed Jerusalem. But in the years before that, under Muslim Ottoman rule, Jerusalem was a backwater.
Jerusalem was occupied by Jordan, illegal occupation, between 1948 and 1967. It was like 19 years, more or less 7,000 days. The Jordanians today claim that Israel should establish a Palestinian state on the West Bank, or what was called the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and its capital should be East Jerusalem. Why didn't they, the Jordanians, when they were occupying the West Bank and East Jerusalem, why didn't they establish a Palestinian state when they could? They had 7,000 opportunities to do it every day. What did they know those days about the existence or non-existence of a Palestinian people and its right over Jerusalem, which they don't know today? Okay, so this is some kind of inconsistency within the Arab world, the Islamic world. As long as it's not in Jewish hands, they couldn't care less about it. There is a majority of Jews in Jerusalem in the 19th century. Okay, so later.
That's right. There was a Jewish majority in this city in Jerusalem even before Theodor Herzl and the Zionist movement really took off.
Sure.
And always through the centuries, even after the Titus and.
Yeah, and they couldn't care less about this because as long as there is no Jewish sovereignty, there is no problem.
Coming up, more on Jerusalem from the amazing Western Wall tunnels with Dr. Mordecai Kadar. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel only on TBN. Don't move. On nearly every border, Israel is surrounded by enemies that seek its destruction. Vicious terror groups like ISIS, Hezbollah, and Hamas are acquiring deadlier and more advanced weapons as Iran moves ever closer to a nuclear bomb. At the UN, the international community shuns Israel. On college campuses, Jewish students are harassed and intimidated. God's chosen people are facing an all-out assault. As a Christian, how will you answer God if you choose to do nothing? It's time for Christians to take a stand. Join Kofi, America's largest pro-Israel organization, where 3 million Christians across the United States are working together to defend Israel in our classrooms, churches, and communities. From college campuses to Capitol Hill, Kofi is making a difference and fighting for Israel. Visit our website, cufi.org, and join the movement for such a time as this. We have ISIS talking about making Jerusalem the capital of its caliphate. How does Jerusalem loom large in the minds of radical Islamists?
Well, they say it out loud, they don't even hide, that they should establish an Islamic Caliphate all over the Arab and the Islamic world as a preamble to an Islamic Caliphate all over the world, and its capital should be Jerusalem. That's what they claim, that Jerusalem should be the capital of the Islamic Caliphate. We heard it in Egypt, we heard it in many other places. Usually preachers who think like the Muslim Brotherhood and the Muslim Brotherhood derivatives, which is Al Qaeda and the Islamic State.
It all comes out of the Brotherhood.
All come
They're the granddaddy.
from the hothouse of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. And they say it out loud. They don't even try to hide it. And yes, this is what they claim. That Jerusalem should be the capital of the Islamic Caliphate.
As people of faith, maybe in the United States watching this show, a Christian, a Jew, why should they care about this delegitimization of Jerusalem as a capital of the Jewish people and the Islamicizing, if that's a word, of Jerusalem? Why should people care about this?
Look, it's the theory of circles. Jerusalem is the inner circle. When Jerusalem will fall into their hands, Israel will be the next circle. When Israel falls, the waves will go to Europe, and after Europe falls into their hands, the Atlantic will be found as not wide enough to keep America away from these waves as well. Because the encouragement which they will have from the fall of Jerusalem into their hands, whether by the United Nations, the United will give them, or the world will press Israel to give them Jerusalem, they will be so encouraged that they can take the whole world. And because this is, and this will be the, I would say, the pinnacle, where the world will succeed or not to stand in front of the wave of Islamism, which will be encouraged if, God forbid, Israel is forced by the Western world mainly to give up on Jerusalem, its ancient capital.
And it's such a sad thing because Israel is the first line of defense for Western civilization and is really all that's holding back the wolves of jihad from coming to the West.
Israel is a front bastion of the West against the waves which are motivated by the hatred to the West. Because the West is permissive, the West is valueless, the West is materialistic, and this is why the West should be toppled. Israel is the first bastion. If Israel survives and sustains against this wave of Islamism, Europe, America are protected. Much better than if Israel collapses, because the collapse of Israel will encourage them to continue and fast.
And how frustrating and short-sighted is it that the West, European and American leaders, are pressuring Israel to divide Jerusalem. As an Israeli, that must frustrate you, and a student of history, that must frustrate you a great deal.
Look, the Al-Aqsa, which appears in the Quran, Jerusalem doesn't appear in the Quran, but the Al-Aqsa appears. Originally, Al-Aqsa was between Mecca and Taif, inside Saudi Arabia today, in the Arab Peninsula. They imported the Al-Aqsa to Jerusalem 50 years later, in 682, in order to convince the people, the Muslims, to come to pilgrimage to Jerusalem and not go to Mecca to hear the propaganda against the Caliph in Damascus. This is the whole story of Jerusalem in Islam. It is a concoction, and today they consider it as some kind of a basic belief in Islam, only because they believe that Islam came to the world to replace Judaism. And if Jews come back to Jerusalem, it means that Judaism is alive and kicking. What will be with Islam? Who originally, according to its own presentation, came to the world to turn Judaism into null and void.
Well, they have failed in their plans because Jerusalem is alive and kicking, Israel is alive and kicking, and Dr. Kadar, we're so grateful that we have you to lay it all out for us, the truth about this city, Jerusalem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Great to have you with us. Thank you. Up next, we're staying in the Western Wall tunnels beneath the old city of Jerusalem for an incredible tour through biblical history that you will not want to miss. Only right here on The Watchman and only on TBN. Stick around. Centuries-old churches and monasteries burnt to the ground, Christian villages ransacked, women and children enslaved, and believers in Jesus led to their deaths. ISIS has declared an all-out war on Christians. Believers in the Middle East outside of Israel are suffering horrible persecution. Christians united for Israel will not remain silent as Islamic extremists carry out a genocide against our brothers and sisters in Christ. On Capitol Hill, Kofi is working hard to ensure America's allies receive the aid they need to defeat ISIS. Kofi is leading a Raise Your Voice campaign to bring the issue front and center for Christians across America. Visit our website, cufi.org, to find out how you can stand with Kofi as we stand up for the persecuted church. If not us, who? And if not now, when? And welcome back to The Watchman. Well, Jerusalem is a roadmap of the Bible. King David, Solomon, the prophets, the Maccabees, Jesus, the Apostle Paul, all of them walked the streets of Jerusalem. And beneath the western wall of the Temple Mount, that biblical history dating back thousands of years comes to life today. I recently had a very special tour of the Western Wall tunnels, and it was an unforgettable experience. Take a look.
So this is the same Western Wall we can see outside. It's the continuation of it. We're not standing on top of it or beneath it or on the other side of it, just along the same wall, but where it's concealed, where it's hidden. If you look over here at the bottom and with your gaze slowly climb up to the top, you will notice different kinds of construction. You're looking at two different periods. 1400 years ago, when the Muslims first came here, they find parts of the wall ruined, destroyed. They decide to renovate. These small stones over here and the larger ones above them, all the way to the top, is 1,400-year Muslim renovation. But from here and all the way down to the valley, we're talking about 4 stories beneath us, this beautiful symmetric shaped stone with this nice frame around it, aligned so neatly one near each other and one on top of the other, with no cement in between to glue the stones together. We call this dry construction, kind of like Lego. This is 2,000-year-old Jewish construction. So look at me, don't follow me. I want to show you something. From here and all the way, going 40 feet along the Western Wall, 40 feet, that is longer than a bus, you're looking at the largest stone found in the Temple Mount. It is 12 feet high and 14 feet deep. It weighs close to 600 tons. That's equivalent to like I would say 200 elephants, or if you want it in a modern scale, 2 airplanes. The big jumbo jets, the transatlantic 747 with the people and the luggage after shopping in Israel. That's heavy, yeah. 2 big airplanes, 1 stone, and the big question is how? How do they carve a stone like this? How do they roll it here? How do they lift it up and place it so accurately? I believe a good question deserves even a better answer. The answer is we don't know. Physicists, mathematicians, archaeologists, engineers, historians today don't know how, with the lack of technology they had 2,000 years ago, they were able to move something so big. This is a mystery, an enigma. But there is one story I could share with you about the stone. When Titus destroys the city, he sees this big stone. As a tactician, as a general, he understands perfectly the symbolic value that the stone has for the Jewish people, for their moral and pride and self-esteem. So you have to try to imagine him telling his soldiers, guys, we need to destroy this because we need to break the Jews not only physically, but also mentally, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. Try to imagine Roman soldiers standing way above us, pushing stones from the wall down to the marketplace below us, stone after stone, row after row, until they get to this big stone. When they do, they huff, they puff, the stone doesn't budge. They try to break it, they try to destroy it, but luckily for us in the end, instead of them breaking the stone pretty much broke them, and they left us this amazing 2,000-year-old testimony.
Folks, you need to take a tour of the Western Wall tunnels the next time you visit Jerusalem. Coming up, my final thoughts on why Jerusalem matters to you as a Christian. It's the Watchman, it's Kofi, only right here on TBN. On nearly every border, Israel is surrounded by enemies that seek its destruction. Vicious terror groups like ISIS, Hezbollah, and Hamas are acquiring deadlier and more advanced weapons as Iran moves ever closer to a nuclear bomb. At the UN, the international community shuns Israel. On college campuses, Jewish students are harassed and intimidated. God's chosen people are facing an all-out assault. As a Christian, how will you answer God if you choose to do nothing? It's time for Christians to take a stand. Join Kofi, America's largest pro-Israel organization, where 3 million Christians across the United States are working together to defend Israel in our classrooms, churches, and communities. From college campuses to Capitol Hill, Kofi is making a difference and fighting for Israel. Visit our website, cufi.org, and join the movement for such a time as this. And welcome back to the Watchman on TBN. It may be hard to believe today, But in the years before 1967, when Israel reunified Jerusalem in a miraculous victory in the Six-Day War, Christians and Jews were denied access to their holy sites in the Old City under Jordanian control. Jews could not pray at the Western Wall, and Christians could not visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or the Garden Tomb, the two most likely spots for Jesus' crucifixion. Now, thankfully, that all changed in 1967 when Israel regained control of the entire city of Jerusalem and made it a place where all faiths can worship and live freely. That includes Christians who visit Jerusalem in droves every year to walk where Jesus walked and see their Bibles, both Old and New Testaments, come to life. Folks, if history is any indication, it is an open question whether the great religious freedom Christians enjoy in Jerusalem today would continue if the eastern half of the city were to come under Palestinian control. Now, Israel is the only place in the Middle East today where Christians live freely and at peace and have freedom to worship as they please, including in Jerusalem. It's no wonder the Christian population in Israel is increasing by the day. Nevertheless, you can bet that the pressure to divide Jerusalem will increase in the days ahead. The book of Zechariah says that a day is coming when God will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it will be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth are gathered together against it. Folks, join us here at Christians United for Israel as we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, now more than ever. Thanks for joining us here on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.